Actually, let's go back further. My story starts actually way before me. I've grown up on the Six Nations territory my whole life. Six Nations territory, though, isn't necessarily just the reserve in which we're on right now. Six Nations Reserve actually only covers 5% of our original lands. Six Nations is actually one of the last places with the largest population of the Carolinian forests in southwestern Ontario. If you're looking on the maps, you're able to see the green, and you can spot that because all around it is development and urbanization. This land that was once our people's are displaced from the land, and the land is displaced from our people, and so that's a lot of where my story comes from. My parents met in Toronto as homeless youth at Horizon Shelter. My mom had run away from home, my dad had been kicked out, stories that happen to a lot of Indigenous youth. That's what my mom didn't want for me. She brought me back home to grow up on my territory and did everything to make sure that I would have the better life and that I wouldn't be homeless, that I would have food on the table. And my mom and dad took that even one step further and made sure that I would get to grow up to know who I was as an Indigenous young woman. But, you know, you go through puberty, being mixed, that's definitely a big part, not living on reserve. We have rites of passage ceremonies for young Mohawk, Haudenosaunee women, and I pushed all that stuff away. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I didn't feel like it was mine necessarily, and I was searching for something I couldn't find. I don't know what I was searching for. With that, I was like, university, that's my answer. That's my ticket out of here. I lived this life of fun, friends, but very disconnected. Didn't see my family, didn't see my community. Eventually, I came home for the summer. There was a summer job at the local development corporation, and I got really excited. They were telling me I was helping with this clean energy transition. I was helping our community become healthier. But I was working in engagement, so that means I actually got to work with the community. And many members of my community did not want these projects. They did not feel that they were being represented. They did not feel that they were being heard. And even being told by a really close family friend that I was working for an evil person. I was working for the evil person.
Now, to understand my community's reaction, you first have to understand that here in Six Nations, we have two distinct governing systems: the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and an elected band council. The former is our traditional government. The latter was actually imposed as a result of the Indian Act, making it a product of a colonial system that, by definition, sees nature as a resource to exploit rather than as something to exist with and within. Going back to the Development Corporation, it's actually a product of the Band Council, and it was not only coming at these issues from a perspective that was fundamentally at odds with our traditional ways of life as Haudenosaunee. They were doing it with this unearned sense of legitimacy that has been a product of the Band Council. So when I went back to school after that summer, I was lucky enough to develop a relationship with my current mentor and supervisor to this day, Dr. Diana Lewis, who opened my eyes to the fact that these injustices that I was seeing in my own community were actually happening to many Indigenous communities all over. My supervisor's work focuses on Pictou Landing First Nation in Nova Scotia, whose hunting and fishing area, Assay, became a waste dumping ground for a pulp and paper mill for over 50 years through the Boat Harbor Affluent Treatment Facility. In what we can only describe as institutional gaslighting, government and industry-sponsored studies kept denying any negative health impacts, even though it was right there for them to see. So Dr. Lewis, with the help of the community, decided to create a sovereign health survey that accurately reflected their lived experiences.
Getting to learn from someone who is thinking so deeply and critically about the relationships we as Indigenous peoples have to this land set me on this whole track of I will never be looking back. This is the work that I'm meant to be doing. And so with all that being said though, I was doing all this work and it wasn't in my community and it wasn't for my community. So that lingered on me. And in 2020, July 19th, land defenders in my community of Six Nations stood and said no to the Mackenzie Meadows development on the border of the Res and Caledonia. It started a months-long standoff to defend these lands and say no development is taking place on our lands anymore. I was sitting in London in my comfy offices in the university, and I'm sitting behind my computer screen, still doing other activism work, but knowing that there were people in my community getting shot at by the OPP. And so that is what sat with me for months. And it all came into this decision of, I need to go home. Oh, look at that puppy. Nice
Nice seeing you.
Hola.
There's families living here, children, gatherings that continue to happen. This is a meaningful space that really brings community. I think that's what's really special, because these kinds of spaces don't come everywhere. And when we're able to self-determine what's going on in our spaces, we can really make them safe and make them a site for power. Governments and industry aren't able to make decisions for us because they don't think the same way we do. They don't have the world view. They don't have those connections to the land that our peoples and our governance systems have. We see all this development, we see all these systems, we see the government has so much control. Our identity as Haudenosaunee is interdependent on the health and well-being of the world around us. And so we're unable to practice our ceremonies and be who we are and practice our languages when we're losing like the world around us, when we're losing our trees, when we're losing our plants, when we're losing our animals. So then we start to lose our ceremony, we start to lose our laws and our governance. It's really discouraging, but then I come to spaces like this and I'm here and I feel that energy of my people and my ancestors and those who have fought before me. And these chiefs, these community members, these frontline land defenders, they all know how heavily of an impact this is going to have on their people in such a way that the mainstream will never, ever understand. I am doing the work for the Creator, for the land, for the waters, for my people, and this is where it starts, is making sure that my home is protected.